INFJs are known for their deep empathy, idealism, and intricate inner worlds. They are driven by a profound desire to understand the complexities of the human soul and often become guides and healers to those around them. However, as with every personality type, INFJs are not immune to their darker tendencies, some of which are not usually discussed and can be truly shocking to those who encounter them. One of such tendencies is their overwhelming need to absorb the emotions and struggles of others. INFJs possess an uncanny ability to understand and empathize with people's pain, which makes them exceptional listeners and friends. However, this emotional attunement can also become their greatest burden. Over time, INFJs may begin to internalize the emotional turmoil of others to the point where it begins to overshadow their own needs and desires. The relentless influx of external emotions can leave them feeling depleted, emotionally confused, and at times, utterly disconnected from themselves. The weight of the world on their shoulders can lead them to suffer in silence, constantly putting others' needs before their own, which can, in turn, cause a gradual erosion of their mental and emotional well-being. What makes this even darker is the INFJ's tendency to suppress their emotions. They often feel misunderstood and incapable of expressing their own needs, especially when they are so attuned to the needs of others. The INFJ might be so focused on offering solutions, comfort, or guidance to others that they ignore their own emotional turmoil. This self-sacrificial nature can often be misinterpreted as selflessness, but in reality, it's a coping mechanism born of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being judged, and fear of not living up to their own high standards for what it means to be a supportive and caring person. The longer they suppress their feelings, the more likely they are to experience deep frustration and even resentment, emotions they may struggle to confront and address. Are you an INFJ who is feeling lost and out of alignment with your true purpose? The INFJ Purpose Compass will help you find clarity, harness your gifts, and align you with your purpose. Click the link in the description of this video to get access now. INFJs are deeply driven by their values and ideals, often striving for perfection in everything they do. However, this idealism can be a double-edged sword. When things don't align with their deeply held values, or when they perceive injustice, they can become disillusioned and cynical. What begins as a genuine desire to improve the world can transform into an intense frustration with the people and systems that seem to perpetuate problems. This disillusionment can make INFJs feel alienated, as though they are standing on the outside looking in, never quite able to reconcile their idealism with the realities they see in the world around them. There's also the INFJ's propensity for becoming withdrawn or even secretive. While INFJs are known for their deep connections with others, they also value their privacy and autonomy in ways that can be difficult for others to understand. They often keep their true selves hidden behind layers of intellect and compassion, afraid that revealing too much of their inner world might result in rejection or judgment. This tendency to withdraw can be exacerbated by their struggle to communicate their feelings effectively, leaving those closest to them unsure of where they stand. At times, INFJs may even isolate themselves completely, feeling as though they are too different from the people around them to truly connect. This need for seclusion can also lead INFJs to become consumed by perfectionism and an overwhelming fear of failure. INFJs can be their own worst critics, setting unrealistic expectations for themselves in every area of their lives. When they inevitably fall short of their lofty goals, they can be harsh on themselves, unable to forgive themselves for perceived mistakes. This relentless self-criticism can turn into self-doubt, leading INFJs to question their worth and their ability to ever truly succeed in their personal or professional lives. They may retreat even further into themselves, overwhelmed by the pressure to live up to an image of perfection that is not only impossible but unsustainable. Another unsettling aspect of an INFJ's darker side is their potential for manipulation, which can be deeply unsettling, especially for those who expect INFJs to be purely altruistic. While INFJs are typically driven by a genuine desire to help others, their deep understanding of human behavior can sometimes lead them to use their insight to manipulate situations to their advantage. They may not consciously intend to manipulate others, but their ability to intuitively understand people's weaknesses and desires can make them highly skilled at steering situations in their favor. INFJs may justify this behavior as a way of helping others, especially if they believe that doing so will lead to a positive outcome. However, this manipulation can still result in hurt feelings, broken trust, and the eventual erosion of their own self-respect. The INFJ's idealism can also manifest in the form of unrealistic expectations for their relationships. They often desire deep, meaningful connections with others, and may become frustrated or even resentful when those relationships don't meet their lofty expectations. Their intense need for authenticity and emotional depth can lead them to hold others to standards that are impossible to live up to. If their emotional needs aren't met in a relationship, INFJs may retreat into themselves, shutting the other person out emotionally. This can leave partners feeling abandoned and confused, unsure of what went wrong or how to support their INFJ counterpart. Also, INFJs can become so consumed by their own inner world and their search for meaning and purpose that they can become disconnected from the realities of daily life. They may neglect practical matters like finances, work, or self-care in pursuit of higher ideals or personal growth. This detachment from reality can lead to burnout, exhaustion, and a sense of disillusionment with the mundane aspects of life. The INFJ's idealism can become a prison of its own making, leading them to feel out of touch with the world around them and lost in a constant quest for deeper meaning. Another unsettling aspect of the INFJ's psyche is their tendency to become overly attached to their vision of the future. They often have a clear sense of where they want to go in life, an idealistic path they believe is meant for them, but the rigidity with which they hold on to this vision can lead to frustration when reality doesn't align with it. The pressure to fulfill this vision, combined with a constant desire for self-actualization, can make them feel as though they are never truly enough. This relentless pursuit of their own version of perfection can trap them in a cycle of perpetual dissatisfaction, as they believe they are constantly falling short of their own high expectations. INFJs can also struggle with the paradox of wanting deep relationships, yet simultaneously fearing intimacy. While they long for meaningful relationships, they often hold back emotionally, afraid that others won't understand their complexity or that their vulnerability will be exploited. This fear of being fully seen for who they are can create a barrier to true intimacy. They may even push away those closest to them because they don't want to risk being misunderstood or judged. In some cases, this can result in a lonely existence, as INFJs feel they are perpetually caught between a desire for connection and an overwhelming fear of rejection. The internal conflict between these two desires often leads them to retreat inwardly, where they can overthink and overanalyze their relationships, sometimes spiraling into anxiety and self-doubt. There's also their tendency to experience intense emotional swings, which can make them seem unpredictable to others. INFJs are often guided by their emotions and intuition, but when their emotions become too overwhelming or when they are faced with too much external pressure, they can spiral into periods of deep sadness, anger, or frustration. These emotional fluctuations can be difficult for others to understand, especially when INFJs become distant or withdrawn without clear explanation. The INFJ's internal world is so rich and complex that they sometimes struggle to express what they are feeling, even to those they are closest to. This can create tension in relationships, as others may feel left out or bewildered by the INFJ's sudden changes in mood and behavior. At times, INFJs may not even understand themselves why they are feeling the way they do, which only adds to the sense of confusion and isolation. INFJs also possess an almost obsessive desire to fix things, which can manifest in unhealthy ways. They are natural problem solvers, always looking for ways to make the world a better place. But this drive can turn toxic if they begin to feel responsible for solving other people's problems to an extreme degree. INFJs may become deeply involved in the struggles of others, taking on the weight of their problems and attempting to resolve them at all costs. This overcompensation, while stemming from a place of genuine care, can lead to burnout and resentment. Over time, they may come to feel unappreciated or that their efforts go unnoticed, which can fuel feelings of bitterness or anger. Additionally, when INFJs are unable to fix a situation or help someone they care about, They may internalize this failure and view themselves as inadequate, reinforcing their feelings of self-doubt and inadequacy. At times, INFJs may also struggle with a certain degree of passivity, especially when it comes to asserting their own needs. Despite their deep emotional intelligence, they can sometimes be reticent about standing up for themselves. INFJs may avoid confrontation to maintain harmony, suppressing their desires and feelings for the sake of peace. This avoidance of direct confrontation can lead to passive-aggressive behavior, where they might silently harbor resentment or frustration without expressing it in a healthy way. This internalized frustration can build up over time, eventually leading to an emotional outburst or withdrawal, which can be damaging to both themselves and their relationships. The INFJ's perfectionistic tendencies can also lead them into a cycle of comparison. While they generally avoid shallow, surface-level interactions, they still deeply care about how they are perceived by others, particularly when it comes to their accomplishments and values. They often have a strong sense of personal integrity and a desire to live authentically, but this can lead to them feeling inadequate if they perceive themselves as falling short of the ideal life they envision for themselves. The temptation to compare their journey to others can be particularly strong when they see people who seem to have it easier or more aligned with their goals. This comparison, though never voiced aloud, can be a heavy burden on an INFJ's mental health, leading to feelings of jealousy, insecurity, and self-criticism. INFJs can experience a deep sense of existential despair when they encounter the inevitable limits of their idealism. Their thirst for meaning in life can be all-consuming, and when they feel they have not made the difference they hoped for, they can fall into periods of deep existential questioning. They may wonder whether their life has been meaningful at all, or whether they are truly fulfilling their potential. These moments of existential doubt can trigger a crisis of purpose, and the INFJ may retreat inwardly for a time, searching for clarity. During these periods, they can become deeply melancholy, often unable to articulate the reasons behind their emotional turmoil. The intensity of their search for meaning can overwhelm them, making even the simplest tasks feel insurmountable. Another dark truth about INFJs is their tendency to sometimes gravitate toward toxic people or situations without realizing it. Because they are so attuned to the emotions of others, they may feel a sense of responsibility for people who are emotionally unhealthy, believing they can help them change. However, this drive to fix others can sometimes blind INFJs to red flags or unhealthy patterns in relationships. They may stay in toxic relationships for far longer than is healthy, thinking that they can eventually save the person or situation. Over time, this can erode their sense of self-worth and leave them feeling drained as they continually give of themselves without receiving anything in return. In these moments, INFJs may also start to harbor feelings of bitterness toward the very people they are trying to help. They may question whether their efforts were ever truly appreciated or if their idealistic visions were misplaced. It's only after they've been burned a few times that INFJs begin to recognize the need to set stronger boundaries with others and learn when to let go of toxic situations, though this realization can come with significant emotional pain and growth. Another lesser discussed aspect of the INFJ's darker side is their tendency to idealize people and situations to an almost obsessive degree. INFJs often see the potential in others that is not always realized, and this idealization can set them up for disappointment. When they get too emotionally attached to an idealized version of someone, they can become blind to the person's flaws or toxic behaviors. They place a great deal of trust in their ability to nurture and transform others, but this trust can lead them to put up with behavior they would never otherwise tolerate, simply because they believe in the person's capacity to change. The more the INFJ invests in this vision, the harder it is for them to face the reality of the situation when it doesn't turn out as they envisioned. This idealization can also extend to their romantic relationships, where the INFJ may develop high expectations for their partner, often built on fantasy rather than reality. They may long for a soulmate connection that is profoundly deep and transformative, which can create a sense of dissatisfaction if the relationship doesn't meet those lofty ideals. INFJs are known for their deep capacity for love, but when this love is not reciprocated in the same way, they can feel hurt and betrayed, leading them to withdraw emotionally. The pain of seeing their ideal relationship unravel can be intense, and it may leave them questioning their judgment and ability to connect with others in a meaningful way. INFJs can become obsessed with finding the one or discovering their higher purpose in life, which can overshadow their day-to-day experiences. They may chase a vision of an ideal life or career, one that aligns perfectly with their values and goals. This intense focus on a future that is not yet realized can lead to frustration, anxiety, and feelings of inadequacy when the present moment doesn't match up. INFJs might constantly question whether they are on the right path, obsessively rethinking their choices, second-guessing their decisions, and fearing they are wasting time. The constant pursuit of their ultimate vision, while admirable, can cause them to miss out on present joys and moments of fulfillment. INFJs, with their deep sensitivity, can also be prone to what can be called emotional flooding. This occurs when they feel overwhelmed by their emotions, particularly negative ones, to the point where they can't process them effectively. This emotional overwhelm may stem from internalizing too many outside emotions or feeling trapped in an environment that doesn't align with their values. In these moments, INFJs can withdraw from the world entirely, needing time and space to recenter themselves. However, this withdrawal can sometimes come across as aloofness or coldness to others, especially those who are not familiar with the INFJ's need for solitude to regain emotional equilibrium. This retreat into solitude is a coping mechanism for managing overwhelming emotions, but can also lead to misunderstandings in relationships, with others wondering why the INFJ is pulling away. INFJs may experience what could be described as emotional burnout due to their excessive giving nature. While they are typically generous and selfless, they can become emotionally exhausted when they give too much of themselves to others without receiving anything in return. This burnout can be exacerbated by their internal struggle to balance their own needs with the needs of others. As they burn out, they may feel disconnected from themselves and wonder if their contributions even matter. This feeling of being emotionally drained can leave them questioning their self-worth, as their value has often been tied to their ability to help others. When they are unable to help or when their efforts go unrecognized, INFJs may spiral into self-doubt and depression, unsure of how to replenish the well of emotional energy they so freely give. INFJs also struggle with perfectionism, which can manifest in their work, relationships, and personal lives. This trait is deeply rooted in their desire to be seen as competent, moral, and capable of making a difference in the world. The pressure to be perfect can lead them to overanalyze and overwork themselves, constantly trying to improve upon what they do. They are their harshest critics, and any perceived failure or shortcoming can lead them into a state of deep self-criticism. The need to constantly strive for perfection can hinder their ability to accept and appreciate their achievements as they are. Instead, they often focus on the areas where they feel they fall short, leaving them perpetually dissatisfied with their own progress.